Okay, good morning. We're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome to the Get Licensed to Build free online workshop for those who want to get their California contractor's license. Our goal this morning is to go through all the different parts of the license application and to give you practical tips on how you can complete it correctly to give you every opportunity to demonstrate your experience and qualifications to get your California contractor's license. We'll also help you get ready for your licensing exams and give you a link to a brand new video that we produced on what you can expect on your test day. Today's webcast is presented by the Contractor State License Board. That is the government agency responsible for regulating California's construction industry. I am Rick Lopes. I am joined this morning by Anna Rodriguez. Good morning, Anna.
Good morning. Hi, Rick. Good morning, David.
And we're also joined at the beginning of our workshop by David De La Torre. This past month, Mr. De La Torre took over as a one-year term as our board chair. In case you didn't know, CSLB is overseen by a 15-member board that directs administrative policy for our operations. The board is made up of 10 public members, including one labor representative, one local building official, one representative from a statewide senior citizen organization, and 5 licensed contractors. Appointments are made by the governor and the state legislature. Now, Mr. De La Torre, who's from San Bruno on the San Francisco Peninsula, is an assembly appointee. He's been on our board since May of 2015. His daytime job is the Secretary-Treasurer of the Labor's Union, Local 261, and they represent about 5,000 members in San Francisco, San Mateo, and Marin counties. Mr. De La Torre is a third-generation laborer who has worked in a variety of local and regional contractors. He also serves as the board president for the San Francisco chapter of the A. Philip Randolph Institute, where he also serves as a national board member, and in 2018, he served as the state president. Mr. De La Torre is also a representative on San Francisco's 100% Renewable Energy Task Force, and he's here this morning to help welcome you to this morning's workshop. So I'll turn it over now to David.
Thank you, Rick. Good morning. As you said, my name is Dave De La Torre. I'm the current chair of the Contractor State Licensing Board. I want to thank you for giving me this opportunity and welcome you to today's Get Licensed to Build workshop. I also want to thank you for taking the time to learn more about the process of getting your California contractor's license. Our pre-workshop survey found that roughly 95% of you joining us today are looking to get your contractor's license, and about 5% are looking to add a classification. The construction industry is full of opportunities for those of you that are willing to get into the weeds to capture work. That means going out, networking with those already established in the industry, and building relationships with other licensed contractors and developers. The ongoing housing shortage has opened up endless opportunities for our general contractors, as have remodeling projects. On a larger scale, our engineering contractors that build our skyscrapers have managed to maintain busy throughout this pandemic, keeping the public and first responders safe by improving the freeways, roads, streets, and bridges we travel on. Or you can focus in a single specialty, like an electrician, plumber, heating, ventilation, and air conditioning, landscaper, painter, or solar installation, just to name a few. From there, your entire future will open up and enable you to live your California dream. It doesn't matter if you want to be a one-person operation where you self-perform the work, have a small group of employees, or grow a large company. It's up to you. Getting your contractor's license may seem like a daunting task, but I'm confident that if you know what you're doing, possess the experience you need to qualify, you'll be able to demonstrate that to us and get your license. In today's workshop, Rick and Anna are going to do their best to help you understand what you need to know to get your license. You'll also want to spend some time getting familiar with the CSLB website to be able to navigate through it. Check out the study guides and other information that will assist you in succeeding in this great industry. With that, I wish you all the best of luck as you begin this exciting new chapter in your careers. Thank you.
Thanks very much, David. Appreciate you joining us. Okay, so what we're going to do is Ann and I, we're going to let you focus on the presentation. So we're going to turn off our cameras. We'll turn them back on later when we get into our Q&As. But we're going to go ahead and get started. So please note, after a 3-month closure due to the COVID-19 health emergency, 7 of CSLB's 8 test centers have reopened, and it's been about 6 weeks now that we've been reopened. And we're working as quickly as we can to get through a backlog of exams that built up during the closure. Last week alone, we administered more than 1,000 exams. And one of the things that's making it tough, though, and keep this in mind as you move through the process, is that on any given day, 10 and 20% of our applicants fail to show up to take their test. So as you move through the process, be sure that you're good when you set up your test date. Write it down, put it on your calendar, don't blow it off. Not only is it going to delay you getting your license, but it's also going to delay another applicant trying to get their license because you've taken the seat. And also keep in mind, too, that when you do get a test seat, if you want to try to get it done faster, since we do have openings, there's a chance you could walk in and show up and maybe be able to get a seat. So think about that if you're trying to get your exam done faster than what you're able to get a test date. You may just decide to maybe show up at one of our test centers that morning, and on the outside chance that we do have open seats, we'd be happy to sit you and let you take your exam early. So if you're watching right now on either YouTube Live or Facebook Live and you want to participate, you need to move over to WebEx and join us there. To do that, just go to the banner that's at the top of the CSLB homepage. It's cslb.ca.gov. Click the register button. You'll go give us your information, and then you'll be able to join in on WebEx. And you're also going to be able to download that presentation to follow along. The link is right there as well. So you can do that. You can watch it now, go back, download it later if you'd like. There's also clickable bonus links that we've got on the presentation that you'll see, and we'll kind of point them out. That expands on information that we're going to be able to cover here this morning. So if you just want to watch the presentation, don't want to do anything else, that's cool too. Either you can do it right here on WebEx or on YouTube or Facebook. You'll be able to see everything that people will see in other places as well.
So we're going to be throwing a lot of information at you, so don't worry if you don't get it all. We're going to be archiving this video of this workshop, and we're going to put it on our YouTube channel, so you can go back and watch it as many times as you need to. To ask a question, you want to use the Q&A feature. You should see the blue circle with a question mark at the bottom of your screen when you mouse over it. Clicking on the circle should open up a Q&A window where you can type your question. Make sure you're sending your questions to all panelists. We tend to get a lot of questions during the workshops on how you document your work experience and what credit you can get for your education or military services. Those questions are fine, but we would ask that you can hold off to actually sending us those questions until the very end to see if part of the workshop answers the questions you may have. We will go through all of your questions at the end of the presentation.
Now, the information obtained during this webcast is not, nor is it intended to be legal advice. While the webcast does contain general information, including legal guidelines for contractor license applications, it does not contain definitive statements of law and may not reflect the most current legal developments in the construction industry. Such guidelines are communicated or discussed during the webcast or for informational purposes only. If you've got questions about the application of the law in specific situations, you should contact an attorney who's familiar with California construction law, or review the 2020 edition of the CSLB publication, California Contractors License Law and Reference Book. You can download it for free on the CSLB website or purchase it directly from the publisher LexisNexis. And as you can see on the bottom of the screen, the bonus links, you have the links for both of those to either see it for free or to purchase it. The links are there in the presentation.
Here's a list of what we're going to be covering today. We're going to take you through the process for applying for your California contractor's license. First, who needs a license? Why you want to get a contractor's license? The minimum qualifications you'll need to get a license, the type of business entities, the different CSLB license classifications. We'll spend a lot of time giving you tips to fill out your application, including how to demonstrate your work experience to meet the minimum qualifications. We're going to be discussing fingerprint requirements for a criminal background check. We will help you get ready for the exam or exams you'll need to pass in order to get your license. And finally, the other things you'll need to have in place before your license is issued, things like a bond and insurance.
All right, so let's go ahead and get into it now. Let's get started. First, who needs a license? Here in California, a state contractor's license is needed for all construction projects that are priced at $500 or more. And that total includes both labor and materials. Now, the law does not let you break it down into $499 pieces. It's the entire project. Also, you can't charge an hourly rate to get around the $500 threshold. If the hourly cost times the number of hours of the job totaled more than $500, that's when you need to have a contractor's license. Okay, so what's the definition of a contractor? The definition comes from the state's Business and Professions Code. In this case, it's 7026.1. We have a link to that code here on the page. I'll read the entire code, but pay special attention to the part that we've underlined. A contractor is any person, consultant to an owner building, firm, association, organization, partnership, business trust, corporation, or company, and this is the important part, who or which undertakes, offers to undertake, purports to have the capacity to undertake, or submits a bid to construct any building or home improvement project or part thereof. So in other words, you don't have to actually do the work to break the law. You must have a contractor's license just to advertise that you can do the construction or home improvement work, or even give a bid for a construction or home improvement job if the bid totals more than $500.
So you may be asking yourself why you should get a license. Here are a few good reasons. First, you can take pride in being a licensed professional. It shows you've taken the steps to get licensed and you're serious about your career choice. It also allows you to make valuable contributions to your local community. Unlicensed contractors must operate in the shadows and cannot help make their community a better place to live. Next, it allows you to get paid for the work that you do. There is a value to the work done by a licensed professional. Being licensed also gives you legal options if customers don't pay you. Unlicensed contractors do not have a legal right to take someone to court to get paid because the work required a license and they weren't licensed to do the work in the first place. Also, you would be able to use the mechanic lien laws. Next, you don't have to look over your shoulder with a fear of getting caught. Contracting without a valid California license can lead to misdemeanor charges. Those caught face a first offense sentence of up to 6 months in jail and/or a $5,000 fine and potential administrative fines anywhere in between $200 to $15,000. Subsequent violations can result in increased criminal penalties and fines. In addition, you may face felony charges if you contract without a license when one is required in a state or federally declared disaster area, or if you try to pass yourself off as a licensed contractor by illegally using a license number. Remember, there are no educational requirements to get a license. Also, you do not have to go to a license preparation school to get your contractor's license.
Okay, so what do you need to do to get your license? The first and most important thing to understand is that CSLB does not license individuals. We license companies, and they're also called entities. Many entities are one-person operations, but just you need to know and understand that every company, even a one-person operation, has to have a qualifier, someone who has the minimum experience and is responsible for the operations of the company. So in many one-person operations, that qualifier is also the person. So that's how that works. Now here's a short list of the minimum qualifications that you'll need. First, you must be at least 18 years old. Next, you must have either a valid Social Security number or a valid individual taxpayer identification number, or ITIN. You can qualify your license in two ways. First, you can qualify the license by having at least 4 years of experience within the last 10 years as a journey person, foreperson, supervising employee, or contractor in the trade that's being applied for. Or you can also get a qualifier for the license who has that required experience. We'll spend a lot of time talking about how you can demonstrate your experience on your application in just a few minutes. Now, in some cases, a college education, a bachelor's or an associate's degree may count towards meeting some of the experience requirements. If you have a 4-year degree in a construction-related field, for example, a number of state universities offer a construction management program, having that type of degree may give you a maximum of 3 years of educational credit in lieu of the work experience. In this situation, you would have to have an additional 12 months of field experience to meet the minimum 4 years of work experience requirement within the last 10 years. And there's also some business classes you can take that may help you earn up to 2 years of education, but it's very topic specific. And we recommend that you call into our licensing information center to discuss your specific class with a supervisor before you submit the application. Or you can also send an email to them at licensing@cslb.ca.gov. It's licensing@cslb.ca.gov. And we'll repeat that a couple more times at least throughout the presentation. Now, completing an apprenticeship program may count towards meeting some of the experience requirements. Some of your military service may count as well. And towards the bottom of the page on the screen, you can see a bonus link to our CSLB Military Application Assistance Program where you can learn more. Now, the license qualifier must also pass 2 different exams, both taken on a computer at one of CSLB's test centers. One exam is on the California business law. The other is on the specific trade covered by the license. And we also have limited specialty licenses, which we'll talk about later. For those people, those are our D licenses. Those licenses only require that the qualifier take the law and business exam.
As we mentioned, the qualifier must take and pass the required exams or qualify for a waiver. We're not going to spend a lot of time here on the waiver, only to note that you might be able to request a waiver from taking one or both exams if you meet a very specific situation. We recommend that you look at the CSLB website for more information on those specific situations. We have included a bonus link at the bottom of the page. The qualifier must also undergo the criminal background check. We will go more in depth on that in a few minutes. After the license is issued, the qualifier must be in position to exercise direct supervision and control of the company's operations. They are also responsible for all workmanship issues. It is also important to note here that if you are trying to get a B general building contractor license and you hire subcontractors to work under you, you are responsible as a project's prime contractor for the work that they do.
Okay, the next thing you're going to need to determine before applying for your license is which type of entity your business is going to be. There are 4 different types, and we'll quickly go through them. The first is the sole ownership, and that's where the owner or the responsible managing employee may serve as the license qualifier. About 64%, so almost 2/3 of our contractors in California are sole ownerships, and this is where many people start, and they may move later on down the line to either a corporation or maybe a LLC. The second is a corporation, where either of the current officers designated as the responsible managing officer or the responsible managing employee may serve as the qualifier. About 1/3, 32% of our licensees right now in California are corporations. A distant third is a partnership, where either of the general partners or a responsible managing employee may serve as the qualifier. That's only about 2% of our licensees. And finally is a limited liability company, or LLC, where a responsible managing member, responsible managing manager, responsible managing officer, or responsible managing employee may serve as a qualifier. Only about 1.5% of California construction companies are LLCs.
Now let's talk about license classifications. A contractor's license can include multiple classifications, although you must select one when filling out your application. While there are more than 40 license classifications in California, they all fall under 3 distinct categories. There is a bonus link to our classification list at the bottom of the screen. First is a Class A, or a general engineering contractor. These are the contractors who deal with the fixed works that require specialized engineering knowledge and skill. A contractors are the ones that build projects such as freeways, skyscrapers, and dams. Today, there are just over 19,000 A contractors in the state. Our next class is the B, or general building contractor. This is the largest class of contractors in California, with more than 133,000. B contractors have a principal business dealing with any structure built, being built, or to be built that requires, as part of its construction, at least 2 unrelated building trades or crafts. In other words, a B contractor shouldn't take a prime contract for any project involving trades other than framing or carpentry unless the prime contract requires at least 2 unrelated building trades other than framing or carpentry. There is no limitation on B contractors to stop them from taking on projects that only include framing or carpentry. The final class is our C, or specialty contractors. These licenses are for construction work that requires special skill and whose principal contracting business involves the use of specialized building trades or crafts. Examples from this class include the C10 electrical contractors, our C20 HVAC contractors, C27 landscaping contractors, C33 plumbing contractors, C39 roofing contractors, C46 solar contractors, and C53 swimming pool contractors, just to name a few. There are also 30 limited specialty classes under the C61 classification. These include the C61/D49 Tree Service Limited class. More than 209,000 contractors hold a C license in California.
A couple things to note that before we move on, I have a typo on there. The actual plumbing contractor is actually a C36, not a C33. So my apologies for that. So a C33 is a painting contractor. One thing I also just want to reemphasize that Anna covered there is when you originally are applying for your license, you can only apply for one classification. So pick the one that is your most experienced or the one best suited to pass the test with. Do that. Then after that, you can add classifications on because you'll need to take additional tests. So right off the bat, you can only apply for one license classification at a time, and then you can add classifications afterwards. Okay, so here are the two forms that you're going to need. On the left is the license application. On the right is the certification of work experience. You can get these forms on the CSLB website. There's a bonus link at the bottom of the page that you see for that. And we'll give you a closer look at the sections. We'll break this down, and then we'll actually show where it goes on the application as we move through this presentation. Okay, so let's go ahead and start breaking down the steps of the application process. First thing you're going to want to do is to identify who is going to be the qualifier for your license. So if you're using an RME, that's a responsible managing employee as your qualifier, you need to determine if he or she can qualify for an exam waiver. We talked about that a little bit ago. Next, make sure that you complete the correct application. There's two options. If they don't qualify for a waiver, you want to use the first one, which is the application for the original contractor's license. If they can qualify for the exam waiver, you're going to want to use the other option, which is the application for the original contractor license examination waiver. And 7065 is the business and profession code that applies to that. The next step is determining your company name. Take a look at the application. We have a lot of examples on that, but some things to keep in mind is your name cannot be misleading or imply that you qualify for a license classification other than what you're getting. So for example, if you're going to apply for a C36 plumbing license, you can't have the name of John Smith Plumbing, Construction, Heating, and Drywall. It goes well beyond what a plumber can do. Now the corporate and LLC names must match exactly the name that you've got registered with the California Secretary of State's office. Also, the names of everyone on your Secretary of State registration must be listed on your CSLB application. That's again, if you're a corporation or an LLC.
Next, you'll want to get together your certifications to support your work experience. You should do this even if you apply for an exam waiver. Feel free to use multiple pages if necessary. Next, be sure to note if you are a military veteran. Some of your military service may be used to meet your 4-year of experience qualification. Also, your application may be expedited through our Military Application Assistance Program. There is a bonus link at the bottom of the screen for more information on that program. To participate, you must have an honorable discharge. Be sure to include a copy of your military DD-214 paperwork showing your honorable discharge with your application. The next couple of items are basic but important. Proofread any misinformation. Make sure you have provided an answer to all necessary fields. Second, don't forget to sign and date your application. Finally, determine if you need a special accommodation to take your exam. If so, complete a request form and submit it with your application. We'll talk about the use of a translator a little bit later.
Next is a closer look at our fingerprint requirements, which are used for your criminal background check. This is a list of those who must submit a full set of fingerprints to CSLB depending on the type of business entity. All applicants, each corporate officer, each partner, each owner, the responsible managing employee, and also all home improvement salespersons. Now, if you're in California, you must submit your fingerprints electronically with what's called LiveScan. You can get an updated list of LiveScan locations around California broken down by county on the Attorney General's website. We have a link here, or you can simply go to the Attorney General's website and search for LiveScan. You also see that we have a link at the bottom of the page to the fingerprint information page on our CSLB website. Now, if you are out of state, it's going to be a little bit tougher for you to get us your fingerprints. That's because you have to actually submit hard copies of them the old-fashioned way. And those, unfortunately, can take anywhere between 3 months and 6 months for the FBI and the Department of Justice to process. So when things settle down a little more with the COVID-19, you actually, if you're out of state, you might want to consider traveling to California because then you can get it done with LiveScan here.
So what happens if you do have any criminal convictions? CSLB may deny your license for the following reasons. First, if your conviction is substantially related to the duties, functions, and qualifications of a contractor. Also, if your conviction involves fraud or a violent crime. There are other factors CSLB also considers. They are the nature and severity of the crime, the amount of time that has passed since a conviction, and any evidence of rehabilitation that you submit to CSLB. CSLB evaluates felony criminal convictions within 7 years of the application date. So for applications filed this year, we would look back to 2013. For misdemeanor criminal convictions, we would look back 3 years of the application date, so 2017. That's unless the convictions are for a violent felony, certain sexual crimes, or financial crimes related to construction. CSLB denies only 1% of the total applications that we receive based on criminal convictions.
All right, our next section is probably the most important of the entire workshop and the part of the application that causes the most headaches for applicants. It's how you demonstrate your work experience on the application. Remember, the license qualifier needs 4 years of experience within the past 10 years in that classification for which you're applying. That means at least 4 years of experience since the year 2010. The experience must be at no less than a journeyman level or as a foreperson supervising employee, a contractor, or an owner builder. A journeyman is defined as an experienced worker who is fully qualified as opposed to a trainee and can perform trade without supervision or one that's completed an apprenticeship program.
So there's a limited amount of space on the application to show your certified work experience. Feel free to use as many additional pages as needed. Simply attach them to the end of the work experience form. That's not a problem. Use as many certifications of work experience forms as you need to prove the required 4 years of experience within the last 10 years. Use a different form for each certifier. Be as accurate as possible. Make sure the person who is certifying your work describes the actual work that you perform and the dates in which you performed those duties. We will now be providing some examples of both good and unacceptable descriptions to demonstrate work experience. You want to make sure you do not copy and paste this information directly into your application. We're just giving you an example so you have an idea of what we're looking for.
Okay, so at the top of the chart, this is the way it's going to get spelled out for you. The first thing is you're going to see it's the classification, and then type of experience you're trying to demonstrate. The first example is for journey person experience. Now, the overall theme that we're going to keep repeating through this is the more specific the description, the better. Note that the work experience form should be completed by your certifier. That is somebody who has the knowledge and observed your work experience for the classification you're applying for. That person can, but does not have to be a licensed contractor.
Okay, so our first example here is for the Class B general building contractor. The best type of description your certifier would use for a journey person experience is to be specific. Journey person experience must include hands-on work. We want to tell it something like this. Bob performed rough and finish carpentry, concrete forming and pours, rough out plumbing and electrical, interior exterior painting, and flooring on residential homes. Something that would be unacceptable would be something generic like this, residential general building trades. So as you can see, we need more specifics. For a four-person experience, the description must include some hands-on work and or supervisory work. Here's an example of the best type of description. Bob oversaw other staff at job sites performing rough and finish carpentry, concrete forming and pours, rough out plumbing and electrical, interior exterior painting, and flooring on residential homes. Again, something unacceptable would be something like this, something generic, residential general building trades. For supervising employee experience, the description should include an explanation of how you arrived at the supervisor level. An example is, as a construction lead on multiple projects, Bob supervised rough and finish carpentry, concrete forming and pours, rough out plumbing and electrical, interior exterior painting, and flooring on residential homes. Again, something unacceptable would be something generic like residential general building trades. For out-of-state contractor experience, the description must include examples of work done that were out of the state, military, on federal lands, or work for a government entity. Applicants can qualify as a journey person, a foreperson, or a supervising employee. A tip: be specific about your duties and the employment circumstances. Our next example that we're going to be taking a look at is for the C27 landscaping contractor. First, for the experience as at a journey person level. The best type of description your certifier would use would be, Jane performed landscape construction, maintenance and installation of sprinklers, ground plants, low voltage lighting, ornamental yard art, concrete mow strips, and pathways and tree pruning. An unacceptable explanation would be gardening, yard maintenance, planting. So again, be very specific. For a C27 landscaping contractor, the best work experience description for a 4-person would be something like this. Jane oversaw other staff at job sites performing landscape construction, maintenance and installation of sprinklers, ground plants, low voltage lighting, ornamental yard art, concrete mow strips and pathways, and tree pruning. An unacceptable description again would be something like gardening, yard maintenance, planting. For a C27 supervising employee, the description should include an explanation of how you arrived at the supervisor level. The best description would be, as a construction lead on multiple projects, applicant supervised landscape construction, maintenance and installation of sprinklers, ground plants, low voltage lighting, ornamental yard art, concrete mow strips, and pathways and tree pruning. Unacceptable here for the supervising employee would be something generic like gardening, yard maintenance, planting. Finally, for out-of-state contractors, the same guidance that we showed you for the general building contractors would be relevant here. Be sure to include examples of your out-of-state work as well as for the military work done on federal lands or for a government entity. Be sure to be specific when you describe your duties and employment circumstances. Now, by law, CSLB must randomly review and verify all the information provided on at least 3% of all of the applications that we receive. Our next 3 slides run down the acceptable documentation that you can use to support your work experience in the event that your application was selected and you were asked to provide additional documentation. The supporting document should not be mailed in with your application. You're only going to want to send this if CSLB asks you to send this in. On the lower right of your screen, you'll see a link to this publication on our website, along with additional information on experience documentation. So if you look at the chart here, you can see that the first column is for documents you can use if you were employed by a licensed contractor. The second column is for documenting experience if you were self-employed. The third column is for documentation you will need if you're applying for a Class B general building contractor license and need to use owner-builder experience to meet the experience requirements. Here's the next page of acceptable documentation. Again, you can click on the link to view and print this publication if needed. On this next slide, here's the final page of acceptable documentation. If you do not have this information readily available to you now, you may want to begin to gather it now, just in case you are selected and are asked to provide this information in the future. Remember, the goal is that you are trying to demonstrate 4 years of experience within the last 10 years. And again, you don't want to send this information in with your application. You're only going to send this in if you are requested by CSLB staff. CSLB staff may also contact the certifier of experience and other parties to verify this experience.
Okay, a couple things to note here. That was a lot of information. So if you haven't downloaded the presentation yet, you may want to do that either now or after we're finished. Go to our website, cslb.ca.gov. Up at the top of the page, you'll see a green banner. On it, an option in this workshop is to download the presentation. So all the information you're seeing on the screen is in that, as well as the bonus links. You'll be able to link straight to that. And one other note, that CSLB does get more than 1,000 applications a month. So our application processing staff has seen it all. 2 pieces of advice here. First, don't cut and paste from this presentation. We've shown it to them. They know what's coming. Also, don't try to get around having to take a trade test by applying for multiple subcategories under the C61 limited specialty classification. Okay, that's the content that you'll need to fill out the application. But before getting it to CSLB, double check to make sure you didn't miss anything. Be sure to sign it and date it as well. You'd be surprised at how many people forget to do that. It just delays the process for them. And also, don't forget to include the all-important $330 application fee. $330. You'll pay the $200 initial license fee, which will cover your first 2 years of your license after you pass your exam or exams. Then we'll put your application packet in the mail. That's when you'll do that, and then or hand deliver it to one of us at our public counters around the state. And we've got bonus link there at the bottom. That's where you can find our office locations.
Okay, so now that we've actually gone through the information that you'll need to include, here's going to be a closer look at the actual application so you can see where this information goes. So right now we're looking at section 1 of the application. Section 1 is where you list your business name. Remember, when selecting a business name, you're going to want to make sure that the name that you have selected is compatible with the classification and also the entity that you are applying for. We don't want it to be misleading. If your business is a corporation or an LLC, you will need to make sure that the name you provide in this section here matches exactly what you have provided with the Secretary of State. In line 2 is where you will indicate what classification you are applying for. The mailing address and phone number that you list on line 3A and 3C will be made public on CSLB's website once you are licensed. Next is Section 2. Section 2 is where you will select your business entity. If you are applying for a corporation or an LLC, you will need to provide your registration number provided to you by the Secretary of State. So you must go to the Secretary of State, register it first, and then use the number here in this section here. Make sure to pay extra attention to the instructions in this section pertaining to the entity for which you are applying. Next is Section 3. In this section, you will list the qualifier's information. Remember, the qualifier is a person that meets the experience requirements and also is going to be responsible for the direct supervision and control of the construction operations. The qualifier is also the person who will be taking the examinations. On line 6, you will list any previous or current license numbers you've held. You will also need to list the percentage of the new business owned by the qualifier. For example, if you're going to be the only person listed on the license, you're going to list 100% on this line. On line 7, you will need to indicate what position will be held by the qualifier. Each entity has different personnel requirements. You will need to make sure that you have listed all positions depending on the entity that you have selected. You can find more information about this on pages 2 through 4 of our application instructions. Line number 8 is where you're going to sign and date your application before mailing it in. Section 4 is where you're going to list the personnel information for all of the remaining personnel that will be listed on the license. For example, if you're applying for a corporation, you will need to indicate who will be the responsible managing officer or employee, your president, the secretary, and the treasurer. Again, more information can be found on page 4 of the application instructions. If you will have more than 4 people on your license, you're going to want to make additional copies of this page here and include it with your application. For corporations and LLCs, you'll want to make sure that all personnel that you have registered and listed with the Secretary of State is also included in this section. So if you need to make more copies, please do so. All personnel that will be listed on the license must sign the application in this section here, Section 4. Next is Section 5. Section 5 is a series of yes or no questions, so we're not going to cover that information here. Parts of the application, Section 6, is where you're going to, we're going to talk about qualifier education, apprenticeship, and military experience. You may be granted credit towards the 4-year experience requirement based on your education. Question number 17 asks if you have completed an educational or apprenticeship program. You will need to submit official sealed transcripts if you would like to be considered for this credit. If you attended formal training or an apprenticeship program, you will need to provide a certificate of completion. Get those sealed transcripts sent to you. Then you're going to want to include it in your application packet when you send in your application. Do not have the program send transcripts directly to CSLB because it's going to be a nightmare to try to match it up with your application. So make sure they send them to you and you send them in with your application. You don't want to take a chance that it's going to not be able to be matched up with your application. CSLB may grant you up to 3 years of credit based on your education. This credit is not on a year-to-year basis, meaning if you have a 2-year college degree, you won't necessarily be granted 2 years of credit towards the experience requirement. You may qualify for this credit regardless of when you completed your education. The 10-year time frame does not apply to the education. You may also apply for this credit even if your education was received out of the country. If your degree is in another language other than English, it must be translated before you mail it in with your application. Okay. Next is the parts of the application is our certification of work experience. We're going to be discussing how to fill out this certificate. Part 1 will be filled out by you. Here you will list the information for your employer where you gained your experience. If you were self-employed when you gained your experience, please make sure to check the box in line number 2. If you're applying for a B General Construction license and will be using experience obtained while working on your own project, make sure to mark the box in line number 4. Part 2 will be filled out by the certifier. In this section, the certifier that you choose must include the dates in which you obtained the experience. They must also select if you were working on a part-time or a full-time basis. Keep in mind that if you were working part-time, you'll only receive 50% credit for that time, which means that you're actually going to have to provide proof of 8 years of experience within the last 10 years so that you can meet that 4 years experience requirement. On line number 6, your certifier will need to list the duties that you performed or supervised that are considered critical duties for the classification that you are applying for. You can read a description of critical duties in CSLB's description of classification booklet, which is available on our website. Again, we don't want you to copy and paste the description from the booklet. This is only to give you an idea of what CSLB considers to be critical duties for each classification. Your certifier should complete this section in their own words and be as complete and accurate as possible. The final part of the work experience certificate is also to be completed by the certifier. They need to list their relationship to you and provide their contact information. Lastly, they will need to sign and date their certification. Okay, now we're going to talk about our owner builder B General Building Construction Project Experience form. This form only needs to be completed if you're applying for a B General Building license, a construction license, and you want to receive experience credit for working on projects on your own property. A separate form is required for each project on the property. Now, the experience has to be verifiable through building permits or final inspections or other documentation. So you will need to list the building permit number on line number 6. On line number 7, you will need to provide the scope of the project. In boxes 8 through 10, you will need to provide more detailed information about the project itself. Next, question number 11 asks if other general construction contractors worked on the project and what trades did they perform. Remember, the information that you include in this information here, in this section here, needs to be as complete and accurate as possible.